I'm sure we've all had weird experiences as kids, but the thing that happened to me when I was 6 was on a whole other level. This was during summer break in 1997, and some days I'd wake up early and go downstairs to our family room to watch cartoons. Eventually I began watching this educational type show with Numberblocks that was supposed to help kids learn math or something, but for the life of me, I have no idea what the show was called or even what channel it was on. It started innocently enough. The show had these colorful blocks, each with a number from 1 to 10 painted on its face, bouncing around the screen, singing catchy songs about addition and subtraction. There was a cheerful host, number 82, who was always smiling and guiding the blocks through simple math problems. I'd sit there on our worn-out couch, the summer sun streaming through the blinds, munching on cereal while the blocks chimed, 1 + 2 is 3, let's count and see. It was fun at first, a break from the usual cartoon chaos. But soon, I found myself hooked. I'd wake up earlier than usual, tiptoeing downstairs to catch the show, sometimes even watching reruns late in the afternoon. My parents didn't mind, as they thought it was great I was into something educational. However, things started to get weird. One morning, as I sat cross-legged on the floor, I noticed something off. The red number 5 block, it had little painted eyes like the others, seemed to stare at me. Not at the host, not at the other blocks, but directly at me. I shifted to the side, and its eyes followed. My heart skipped a beat. I blinked hard, figuring I was still half asleep, and when I looked again, it was back to normal, bouncing along with the others. I laughed it off, but a tiny knot of unease settled in my stomach. Over the next few days, it kept happening. The block's voices, high-pitched and playful, started sounding familiar. One day, the blue number 3 sounded like my first grade teacher, Mrs. Larson, reciting 3 × 2 is 6. The next time, the yellow number 8 mimicked my dad's deep voice, saying 8 - 4 is 4. By the end of the week, the green 1 sounded like me, giggling as it rolled across the screen. I tried to tell my mom about it over dinner one night. The number blocks sound like us, I said, poking at my mashed potatoes. She just patted my head and smiled. That's nice, honey. It's good you're engaging with the show. That's when the whisper started. I'd be upstairs building with Legos or downstairs grabbing a snack, and I'd hear faint voices, soft, like they were coming from far away. Add us up, count us out. At first, I thought the TV was on, but when I checked, the screen was dark. The whispers followed me anyway, drifting through the house. One afternoon, I was in the backyard kicking a soccer ball when I heard 7 + 3 is 10, clear as day, right behind me. I spun around, nothing but the empty swing set creaking in the breeze. I began to dread the show, but for some reason I couldn't stop watching. It was like something was pulling me back to it. My parents began to notice I was quieter, clinging to them more, but when I mumbled about the voices, my dad just chuckled. "You've got a wild imagination, kiddo," he said, ruffling my hair. I wanted to believe him, but the whispers wouldn't let me. Then came the worst night. I woke up to a faint glow spilling across my bedroom floor. My clock read 2:47 a.m., and my heart thudded as I leaned over the edge of my bed. There they were, the number blocks, lined up in a perfect row. The red 5, the blue 3, the yellow 8, all of them, their eyes painted glowing dimly in the dark, staring up at me. The number 82 block was there too. I couldn't move and couldn't scream. As I watched, they started to shift, stacking themselves into a shaky tower. Higher and higher it grew until it brushed the ceiling. Then, in unison, their voices rang out, loud and insistent. "We're here to help you learn, don't be afraid." Despite their words, terror clawed at me. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to stop. When I opened them, the glow was gone. The floor was empty, and my room was silent. I sat there trembling until morning, too scared to even call for my parents. Had it been real? A dream? I couldn't tell anymore. The next day, I refused to go near the TV alone. I begged my mom to sit with me if I watched anything, and I avoided that channel like the plague. I even asked my dad to check the TV guide for the show, but he frowned and said, "What show? I don't remember any number blocks." I flipped through every channel myself. Nothing. No singing blocks, no cheerful number 82 host. It was like the show had vanished. Eventually life went back to normal, sort of. The whisper stopped, and I pushed the memory down deep. But years later, as an adult, I was channel surfing one night when I stumbled across a kid's math show. The characters weren't blocks, this time they were shapes or something, but their voices hit me like a punch. That same sing-song tone, that eerie familiarity. My skin prickled, and I switched it off fast. To this day, I still don't know what happened that summer. Was it just my 6-year-old mind playing tricks, or was something else going on, something tied to that nameless show? I'll never have answers, but one thing's for sure. I'll never trust a cheerful number block again. I've been a teacher for 6 years, and like most teachers, I do spend some of my own money to buy supplies for my classroom. This story took place 3 years ago when I was teaching kindergarten and pre-K, and one of the things I wanted was another set of number blocks for our math station. It was a crisp fall evening, just after the school day ended, when I decided to stop by Teach and Tumble, a small educational supply store I'd frequented since my first year on the job. The place was a teacher's paradise, shelves packed with colorful flashcards, bins of glitter glue, and rows of toys designed to make learning fun. I really loved the routine of it, wandering the aisles, imagining how each item would brighten my students' faces. That night, the store was nearly deserted, the only sound the faint buzz of the overhead lights and the occasional rustle of a fellow shopper a few aisles over. I headed straight for aisle 5, where the number blocks were kept. They were simple wooden cubes, painted with bright numbers and letters, perfect for little hands to stack and count. However, as I approached, the air felt oddly still, like the store was holding its breath. I brushed it off as fatigue from a long day of corralling 5-year-olds and scanned the shelves for a new set. That's when I saw it. A row of number blocks on the middle shelf wasn't just stacked haphazardly like usual. They were lined up, deliberate, spelling out "Hi." Apparently these blocks had a few letters on them as well. I tilted my head, curious. Hi? Maybe a playful employee had set it up as a greeting. It was cute, if a little strange. I smiled at myself and grabbed a box set from the shelf below, then moved on to find some markers. But as I turned into the next aisle, I stopped cold. Another set of blocks, these ones loose and scattered across an end cap display, caught my eye. They spelled USEE, or UC. My smile faded. Hi, you see? It didn't make much sense, but the coincidence prickled at the back of my neck. I glanced around, expecting to spot a giggling coworker or a mischievous kid hiding nearby. The store remained quiet though, save for the distant clatter of a shopping cart. I shook my head, convincing myself it was nothing. Stores like this were full of odd little quirks, customers messing with displays and staff testing out products. Still, my pace quickened as I grabbed the markers and headed toward the craft section. That's when I saw the third message. Tucked between rolls of construction paper, a handful of blocks spelled MENOW. My breath hitched. Hi, you see me now. It wasn't just a random phrase anymore, it felt directed and personal. My heart started to thud, a dull rhythm against my ribs. I spun around, scanning the aisle. Empty. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly overhead, casting long shadows that twisted across the floor. Okay, calm down, I whispered to myself. It's just blocks. Someone's messing with you. Maybe a student's older sibling had recognized me and decided to play a prank. It was a small town after all, but that explanation felt flimsy, and the unease gnawed deeper. I decided to cut my shopping short. Clutching my items, I hurried toward the checkout, avoiding the number block aisle altogether. But as I passed a display near the registers, more of those damn blocks, I couldn't help but look. They were arranged again, this time spelling "Stay Here." A cold sweat broke out across my skin. Stay here? Why? The message wasn't just cryptic, it felt like a command. I forced my eyes away and dumped my supplies on the counter. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with a tired smile, barely looked up as she scanned my items. "Find everything okay?" she asked, her voice monotone. I hesitated, then blurted, "Did someone set up the number blocks to spell things, like hi and stay here?" She paused, frowning. "Not that I've seen. Kids come in here and move stuff around sometimes. Why? Did you see something weird?" "Yeah," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "They're spelling out messages. It's creepy." She chuckled, bagging my items. "That's a new one. Maybe you've got a secret admirer." Her tone was light now, but it didn't ease the knot in my stomach. I paid quickly, eager to leave. As I stepped toward the exit, I risked one last glance back at the store. Through the glass doors, I could see the display near the registers. The blocks had shifted, or maybe I'd misread them before. Now they spelled "not done." I stumbled into the parking lot, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. My car felt miles away, though it was only a few steps. Once inside, I locked the doors and gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. Not done? Not done with what? The words looped in my mind, each repetition more unsettling than the last. Driving home, I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone, or something, following me. The streets were empty, but the feeling of being watched never left. When I finally got to my apartment, I dumped the supplies on the kitchen counter and sank into the couch, exhausted but wired. That's when I noticed the new set of number and letter blocks I'd bought. I hadn't opened the box yet, but it was sitting there, slightly askew, like it had shifted on its own. My hands trembled as I tore it open, spilling the blocks across the counter. They clattered into place, and I swear, for a split second, they formed the words, "Found you." I blinked, and they were just a jumbled mess again. No words, no order, just ordinary blocks. I laughed, a shaky, hollow sound. "You're losing it," I told myself. "It's been a long day." But that night, as I lay in bed with the lights off, every creak of the building sounded like footsteps. Every shadow seemed to stretch a little too far. I told myself it was all in my head, that the messages were random and meaningless. Maybe they were a prank, or maybe my imagination running wild. Yet, when I went to school the next day and set the blocks out for my students, I couldn't stop watching them. The kids stacked them happily, giggling as they built towers and counted aloud. But once, when the room was silent during nap time, I glanced at the math station and saw the blocks arranged in a neat row. We know. I haven't gone back to teach and tumble since. I tell myself it was nothing, a trick of the light, a tired mind playing games. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if those blocks were trying to tell me something. Or if whatever was behind them is still out there, waiting to finish what it started. When I was around 5, I started to get obsessed with math and numbers. I remember drawing numbers on sheets of paper with markers, then cutting them out and taping them together to make my own number blocks. According to my parents, I do this almost every day after coming back from school. My room would transform into a chaotic gallery of these little creations, numbers scribbled in bright reds, blues, and greens, taped into clumsy cubes and rectangles. I'd scatter them across the carpet, stacking them into towers or lining them up in rows, lost in my own little world. My favorite parts of the process were the smell of the markers, the snip of the scissors, and the crinkle of the paper as I folded it. I didn't have a favorite number back then. I loved them all equally. My parents thought it was cute, even endearing. "He's going to be a mathematician someday," my dad would say with a proud grin. But they didn't know what was coming, and neither did I. It started on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The sky outside was a dull gray, and the patter of rain against the windows made the house feel smaller and cozier. I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by scraps of paper, working on a new batch of blocks. I just finished drawing a big, bold 9, red marker, my favorite color that day, when I noticed something odd. The block I'd made earlier, a number 1, was lying on its side a few feet away, but I didn't remember moving it. I frowned, picking it up. The edges were crumpled, like someone had stepped on it. That seemed odd, but I figured I'd knocked it over without noticing. I set it back on the desk and kept going, cutting out the 9 and taping it together. But that's when I heard it, a faint rustling sound like paper shifting. I looked around, but nothing seemed out of place. The room was still, the rain outside steady. I brushed it off and reached for a fresh sheet of paper. But then it happened again. This time it was louder, a distinct crinkle, like someone was crumpling paper right behind me. I whipped around, my heart thudding. Nothing. It was just my room, my bed, my toys, and my number blocks scattered across the floor. I swallowed hard and turned back to my desk, but that's when I saw it. The number 1 block was gone. I stared at the empty spot where I'd left it. My eyes darted around the room, searching. There, under the bed, half hidden in the shadows, but how did it get there? I knew for a fact I hadn't touched it. I crawled over, reaching under to grab it, my fingers brushing the cold floor. As I pulled it out, I noticed something else, a faint smudge on the paper, like a fingerprint, but it was black, like charcoal. I also knew I hadn't used any black markers that day. From then on, things only got stranger. Every time I made a new block, something would happen. I'd draw an 82, and when I turned back, it'd be upside down. I'd stack a tower of blocks, 2, 5, and 8, and find them toppled over minutes later, even though I hadn't bumped the desk. Once, I swore I saw a block, a 6, twitch, just a tiny jerk, like he was trying to stand up. I rubbed my eyes, telling myself I was imagining it, but deep down I wasn't so sure. I started keeping track. I'd write down the numbers I made each day in a little notebook, just to see if there was a pattern. That's when I noticed something chilling. The blocks had moved or changed. They were always numbers I'd drawn more than once. Like the one from that first day, I'd made 3 1s that week, and every time, something weird happened with them. Same with the 4s and 6s. It was like they didn't like being repeated. One night, I decided to test it. I sat at my desk, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. I drew a 3, blue marker sharp and clear, cut it out, and taped it into a block. I'd already made a 3 earlier that day, so if my theory was right, something would happen. I placed it in the center of my desk, surrounded it with other blocks, 7, 9, and 2, and waited. For a while, nothing, just silence. I started to feel silly, like maybe I was making it all up, but then I heard it, a soft scrape, like paper dragging across wood. My eyes snapped to the 3 block. It was moving, not fast, not dramatically, but inching along, sliding toward the edge of the desk. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't dare move, and didn't dare blink. It reached the edge and stopped, teetering there, as if daring me to touch it. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the block, my hand shaking, and tore it apart. The paper ripped with a loud shrip, and for a split second I thought I heard something, a tiny muffled sound like a sigh. I threw the pieces into the trash and backed away, my chest heaving. After that, I told my parents everything. The blocks are moving, I swear. I said this as my voice cracked. They're doing it on their own. My mom's face softened. Oh, honey, it's just your imagination. Maybe you're spending too much time with those blocks. My dad nodded. Could be the wind from the window, or maybe you're just tired. The window wasn't closed, and I wasn't tired. But they also wouldn't listen. They started watching me more closely too, and I could tell they were worried. They even threw out my markers and papers, saying I needed a break. For a few days, the house felt normal again, no rustling and no moving blocks. I almost convinced myself it was over. But that's exactly when I found the note. It was under my pillow one morning, a torn scrap of paper, the kind I used for my blocks. On it, in jagged black ink, was a single number, 82. Below it, in smaller, shakier writing, were the words, "Don't make more." It wasn't my handwriting. I checked the trash. The pieces of the 3 block I'd ripped up were still there, but this paper was different, older, and yellowed at the edges. I showed it to my parents, but they brushed it off. You must have written it and forgotten, my dad said, though his voice wavered. My mom just stared at it, silent. I stopped making blocks after that. Whatever was happening, I didn't want any part of it. But sometimes, late at night, I'd hear that rustling sound again, faint, distant, like paper shifting in another room. And once, when I was half asleep, I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow under my bed, shaped like a small, uneven cube. To this day, I still don't know what was really going on. Maybe it was all in my head, a kid's imagination running wild. Or maybe something else was there, something tied to those numbers, something that didn't want me making more. All I know is I never touched a marker the same way again, and I still double check under my bed before I go to sleep.